Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode number 21 with Greg Fisher from Team Unleash Your Potential, the 7 habits of highly effective people. And yes, this is Stephen Covey's amazing book that Greg had the wonderful idea to turn into a very important part of his business. Just a few words about Greg before he starts teaching us about leadership and before he tells us his amazing input on fear. Greg is a coach and entrepreneur. He is the CPO of his business, Team Unleash Your Potential. In 2020, Greg left behind a successful 20-year career as a people leader in the grocery retail analytics industry to pursue his passion for leadership as a coach and online course creator. I applaud Greg for doing this because it's never too late. Greg works with leaders in the retail and analytics industries to help unleash their potential. He has spent over 20 years studying and practicing Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and since starting his coaching practice, he has been exploring Sydney Banks' 3 principles, and we are going to find out so much more about this. Greg, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, Roxana. Thank you for inviting me.
Can you please tell us, Greg, what is the story behind your mission and business around leadership?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, it all goes back to around 2001. I was actually came across Stephen Covey's 7 Habits kind of by happenstance. I was with my wife visiting my parents in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I needed a book to read on the flight home. And my dad said, "Oh, here, I have 2 copies of this. Why don't you take this?" And I thought, "Oh, I'd heard about the 7 Habits, I think, in university or something." I thought, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll kill time on the plane with this book." Little did I know that I literally wouldn't be putting that book down for the next 20 years. And yeah, I just was fascinated. Started reading it. It really resonated for me. I think I'm very analytical. I mean, I worked in, like I said, grocery retail analytics and stuff. So the fact that the 7 Habits is very linear and kind of sequential really resonated with me. And so I took that book and I started implementing the habits with myself and with my teams at work, and really was blown away with the results of what focusing on leadership. I mean, we're so focused generally on tasks and projects and getting work done, but when you step back and you just focus on your own personal growth and leadership, it's like an exponential effect on everything that you do and that your team does. And the one word that kind of kept coming back to me over and over and over again was this word potential. And my first experience with the kind of exploring potential was I was doing mid-year performance reviews with my team. And I went through the standard stuff that our company would provide. Then I came up with this question I wanted to ask them at the end, which was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself versus your potential? And it's kind of the kind of question that I think most of the folks that worked for me anyway had never contemplated or thought of, or it was just kind of took them aback a little bit. And I got a wide variety of answers. One gentleman, I'd say his answer was like borderline delusional, because he said, 10 out of 10, I'm already at my full potential. And the irony of his answer was that he was actually not a very strong performer in his role. Then you have other people that are more realistic and they're like, I don't know, a 4 or 5 out of 10. Like they recognize that they're doing a good job. And the funny thing is that how you rate yourself versus your potential isn't necessarily the same as you would rate yourself on your job performance, because you can be operating way below your potential and still be doing an amazing job. So the correlation is not there. But the reason I tell this story is I had one person on my team who he actually didn't want to answer the question. He deferred. He said, I don't know. He goes, let me think about it. I'll come back to you tomorrow with an answer to that question. And he came back and he said he thought about it overnight. He said if he's realistic about it, he's really been operating at a 6 out of 10. And this guy was my top performing person on my team. He was like my go-to person. But he recognized that he was operating below his potential. Well, to make a long story short, what happened? Well, within a few months, he quit. And the reason he quit is because he started thinking about it and he realized I could be doing a lot more than I'm doing in this job, in this company. And he started exploring other opportunities and he ended up finding, I think if I remember correctly, it was like a 2 or 3 level step up from what he was doing to go work for a manufacturing company. And then today, fast forward 20 years or so, he's a vice president at a company. So it's one of those things where, I don't want to take any credit because everything he did to get to where he is was on him. But I feel like I was like that spark that lit that fire with that one question: how do you rate yourself versus your potential? And it kind of turned him in a direction and sent him down on a path. So to me, that's that whole potential. And that's why I named my company Team Unleash Your Potential. That's really what I'm after, is how do you help people tap into their potential? And you mentioned my title in your intro, CPO, just so people understand what that means. It's Chief Potential Officer, which is probably a title that nobody's ever heard before. And when I was starting my business, and I thought, what am I going to call myself? Am I going to call myself the CEO, the president, the founder? You can call yourself all kinds of things. And I thought, in keeping with this theme of potential, I just came up with the Chief Potential Officer. And I thought, and it relates back to what you talk about in terms of fear and stuff. Like, I did have that inkling of like, what are people going to think when they see this on LinkedIn? What the heck is a Chief Potential Officer? But it's I just went for it. I put that fear aside and just went for it. And so every day I'm trying to unleash my own potential, and everyone I come in contact with, trying to help them unleash theirs as well.
I appreciate you so much for mentioning about this. And yes, I have read the book. It was a few years ago, but you are making me very curious to reread this, because indeed, these are books that you can never be tired of. And I'm such a fan of reading. And thank you for telling us the story of your former colleague. And it's such a clear, amazing story how a book can truly change your life for good and for real. You are mentioning potential. And yes, I did check your title. And since I read the book, I made the connection immediately. That's why I didn't want to explain the CPO yet. However, can you please tell us, what does potential mean from your point of view? And how do you see leadership? How do you combine these two very complex yet maybe simple ideas of leadership and potential?
Sure. Well, when I think about potential, particularly more recently, now that I've started studying Sydney Bank's 3 principles, is, we're all connected to the infinite wisdom and power of the universe. And we have innate capacities that we're born with for wisdom and resilience, curiosity, well-being, the power for insight and realization. And really, that's where all those innate capacities is the birthplace of our potential. That's where it all starts. And, sadly, most of us spend most of our lives barely scratching the surface of what it is that we could accomplish. And it's not to say that everyone has to be a Bill Gates or a Jeff Bezos or a billionaire or whatever. Unleashing your potential doesn't mean you're a billionaire. It means you're tapping into those innate capacities and following your heart and your passion and doing the things that give you the most fulfillment and purpose in your life. And the way that leadership ties in with potential, Covey in his book, The 8th Habit, has a definition of leadership. Try to remember it here. It says leadership is communicating to people so clearly their worth and potential that they come to see it in themselves. And to me, that's a hugely powerful definition of leadership. It's because it's not about you, the leader, at all. It's about the person and pointing them in their direction of their worth and potential. And you're just pointing them that way so they can see for themselves what they're capable of. And that's, the whole unleashing of that is kind of what makes me the most excited, when you can, similar to the story I just told about that gentleman, like you're pointing them towards what they already have. And when they realize that, they can take action, and it's like a snowball effect, right? It just, you get momentum, and it builds and builds, and it goes from there.
Beautiful. And indeed, there is no greater satisfaction, Greg, than seeing the people you work with flourish because of your influence and because of your guidance. And it doesn't beat anything. And I know what you mean, as I'm also in the coaching industry, and seeing people succeed with the help that we are providing is indeed priceless. How was your journey from being an employee to starting your own business?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, from the day I got into leadership and focusing on it, I knew that that's primarily what I wanted to do with my life. It was kind of like a calling, so to speak. And for many years, I did it within the context of my job. So I always had teams of people that I managed. Sometimes it was, 1 or 2 people. Sometimes it was as many as 20 people. And I don't want to say every person that ever worked for me, because somebody will type in and say, no, you didn't buy me the book. But virtually every person that ever worked for me, I bought them a copy of the 7 Habits. And I'm sure on my Indigo or Chapters account, they would look and go, why is this guy's bought like 50 copies of this book? What's wrong with him? And then I would use that as kind of a topic of conversation. I used to joke that, people thought of me as a disciple of Stephen Covey's, because I was like literally that into it. We couldn't go through a conversation without me quoting Stephen Covey. But with that kind of intertwined in my life in terms of at work, I found myself in 2019, the end of 2019, being restructured out of my job, which actually was a blessing for many reasons. One is I was kind of miserable in that job anyway. So it was like, thank God a package came along. I'm happy to take it and leave and go figure out what I want to do. The second blessing of that, which is a bit of a tangent, but I'll share the story. My mom had, her health had been declining steadily for a couple of years. So this was September 2019, and they had moved in. My parents had moved in with us in January 2019. So they were at my house. So from September until February of 2020, when my mom eventually passed away, because I got restructured out of my job, I actually got to spend the last 5 months of her life with her every single day, which is kind of a complete blessing. Of course, at the time when you don't have a job, and a lot of us tie our identity and our whole life around our job and our career and how that's going, and all of a sudden that's gone. But it opened up this opportunity to spend that time with my mom, which, I'm very grateful for, and could never go back and have that if that didn't happen. And then, crazy enough, COVID came along, and finding another job, which I tried to do starting in January 2020, wasn't happening. And I really took it as a sign. Like, this was part of what I've come to realize more recently too, is, there's constantly signs being thrown at you all the time, and most of the time we ignore them, or we're deaf to them for whatever reason. And this time I just listened and said, yeah, I can, I spent my whole life working for somebody else. It's time to do this on my own. And it ties in with the whole notion, like, this is my venue to go unleash my own potential and to impact and have an impact and effect on a much broader audience than what I have at my disposal working for a corporation. So I'm actually, tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary of when I officially created my company. And it's been probably the best year of my career so far. So I'm very thankful for how everything has come together. I really truly feel like it's everything I had done the last 25 years since I finished university has really come together this last year to put this business together and put it out there for the world. And thankful for people like you that give me a platform to share my story as well. So thank you.
Congratulations for the 1-year anniversary of your Team Unleash Your Potential, Greg, for tomorrow. This is truly major. This is an accomplishment. And since I have a mentor helping me with my podcast, he once told me that you are going to influence the people you talk with in so many ways that you won't even know. And you are doing the same thing with your amazing leadership business, because leadership is about people. And I wanted to ask you, since you are such a fan of this book, and I myself like it a lot, would you say that our potential is infinite, limitless? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's both infinite and limitless. It's and it builds off itself. The more you tap into it, the more you have. So it's one of the concepts that Covey talks about is the scarcity mentality versus the abundance mentality. And I truly think potential is in that abundance category. There is no limit to the potential that each individual has. That a team has, that society has. It's funny because in today's society, there's a lot going on, no matter where you are in the world. I mean, globally, we're all dealing with this pandemic, symptoms of the pandemic in terms of inflation and unemployment and the economies and all kinds of stuff's going on. And people might say, well, these are the craziest times there's ever been, which every generation kind of says that about what's going on in their world. So I don't know, but I kind of look at that, and I think that ties into a lot of people's fear, just relating it back to fear too, that, people are fearful of what's happening in the world and where are we going. And I don't know, I just kept getting led back to our potential as a species to survive and to thrive, our resilience. To me, the future is bright. It's as bright as it's ever been in a lot of regards. If you think about, I don't know, virtually every social issue that we have, yes, there are issues, but I would say, you think of climate change. Well, there's more things being done today to combat climate change than ever in the history of mankind. I mean, there's more recycling, there's more repurposing, there's more initiatives for green energy. Yeah, we got a long way to go, and there's consequences if we don't get there, but we're on the path. Same with kind of in North America, particularly in the US, race relations is a big thing, and there's been a lot of stuff happening in the last couple of years in that area. But at the same time, I see statistics that say there's more interracial marriages than ever before. There's more protesting for social justice than ever before. Like, there's all these movements and things going in the right direction. So to me, that's society tapping into our potential to make things happen, to get the world from where it is to where we want it to be. And it's a bumpy road, no doubt. I mean, anything worth having or fighting for is not easy, but I don't know, I'm very optimistic. Like I said, I've got 2 teenage kids, a girl and a boy, 17 and 15. And I don't know, I'm really excited for what the future has in store for them and what they can make of it.
I truly love your positive mindset. And a quick question for you. Would you say that it is safe for us to consider that we are never going to reach our full potential?
Yes. I mean, I think of it in terms of it's about the journey, not the destination. I don't even think it's possible to reach the end of your potential, because it's infinite, it's endless. There's nothing, there's no end to get to. So it's, I don't think that there's anything to worry about there. But at the same point, the thing that's coming up for me too is that it feels like you could interpret this a little bit in terms of having pressure. Like, is there pressure to tap into my potential? I'm not doing enough to tap into it. And I think that's kind of a red herring as well. Like, it's not about not doing enough. Everyone just do what you can do. That's, and for some people it's tiny little steps. For other people it's big leaps, and you may ebb and flow in your career and it's okay to have some downtime. And it's funny, I don't know what your experience was, but I know early in the pandemic there was a lot of chatter I'd hear about, I hope you're taking advantage of all this time you have at home to better yourself and to go do courses, and you don't want to look back on this time you had and think you wasted it watching Netflix or whatever people do to pass time. And I thought well, that's putting a lot of pressure on people. Like, there's a lot to deal with the pandemic without having to add this additional pressure of, like, I better get a degree or or a certificate or something during this, or I've wasted my time. So people will always do what makes sense to them, and I just encourage people to not buy into that narrative of having to do anything that doesn't make sense to you. Just know that you have everything you need, and you have this potential that you can tap into at any time, and go from there.
Beautifully said. And I sense a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy, which I truly admire in people as you are, Greg, because you have come a long way with keeping yourself as active as possible in a job that you yourself said that you didn't like anymore. And when it was time to move along, you did it, and it was amazing. Many of us do compare ourselves with other people, and I found it so funny when you just said that, okay, I might as well get some degrees now since I'm staying home. But no, you don't need to do this unless it's you who decides to do this, unless you feel and think it's the right path for you. You sent me this wonderful quote on fear, which I completely resonate with. And let me tell you which one is. Fear is wetting your pants. Courage is doing things with your pants wet.
Yeah.
I'm resonating with this, not because I am wetting my pants, but it's because I do have a baby girl that does this quite often, and I do see her moving around with her wet clothes, and it got me thinking that, wow, courage is one of the strongest skills that we should grow, and it's not because that we're maybe not born with it. It's all done for. It is a skill that you grow. What is your take on courage and fear, Greg?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. Yeah, that quote I heard from Jamie Smart, who's been my mentor and coach over the last 6 months or so, and it's a bit of a disturbing visual, but for me, a lot of people don't do things because of the fear, and they have this kind of misunderstanding that until the fear goes away, I can't do it. Like I need to wait until I'm not fearful. And that quote symbolizes that you can do everything with wet pants. It doesn't matter. So it's not about not being fearful. It's about doing it anyway, and that's what courage is doing it despite the fear. It's not the absence of fear. It's doing it despite the fear. So I think about that quite a lot. And I used to do a lot of public speaking in my jobs, because we'd be doing presentations to, sometimes 20 people, sometimes 200 people, at retailers and manufacturers and things. And you'd always get those butterflies right before you went on stage to do a presentation. I used to think to myself, like, why am I like, what am I afraid of? I do this all the time. But I came to the conclusion that, like, it was good, because it meant I cared, right? Like, it was, if you weren't nervous, I don't know if it's true for everybody, for me anyway, if I wasn't nervous, then that would be more concerning than being nervous. And you just go out and do your thing. I mean, and once you're in the moment, all those fears kind of just go away, and you did the preparation, you know what you're talking about, and you just go for it. And at the end, you often think like, why was I so nervous about that? It went amazing. And even if it doesn't go amazing, it's not really the point of how it goes. It's the point of just doing it and breaking through whatever that fear is. So yeah, when I'll mention one thing about Jamie Smart. We were on a coaching course, and they were talking about enrolling clients and things, and asking for a certain price for your services and things. And the lady said, well, I don't know if I'd be comfortable asking for that much money. And he said, kind of sarcastically, oh, did you think you need to feel comfortable before you can do it? And often we do. And that's kind of that, we think we need to be comfortable. We need to wait till the fear goes away. But, instead you can just, what he says is, do courage. Just do courage. And you'd be amazed what happens when you act from that place of courage, and you get past whatever those fears are. It opens up a whole new world to you, because you're no longer controlled by whatever those fears are. You can do things anyway. So it's a very freeing, liberating place to come from, is knowing that you can do it anyway.
I find it beyond inspiring what you said now. Do courage. Fear happens anyway, because it's part of how we are built. It is part of us as human beings, and fear has a very important role, actually. It wants to keep us alive. It wants to keep us safe. And one of the reasons why I specialized in fear with my business was because I got to be very blocked and frustrated around 10 years ago. And I felt fear to be this awful enemy, when in fact, as you switch perspective just a bit, and you get to see things from a whole new angle, fear is such a strong motivator. It gives you the fuel to do it anyway. And another great thing that we can do is to change it with excitement. When you change your inner dialogue and say, okay, I'm afraid to do this, just say to yourself this instead: I'm excited to do this, because it's a whole new level of energy going through your mindset then, and you are going to rock any stage, any public speaking, and any meeting that you'll ever have. Fear is quite powerful when we use it to our advantage, because we have it anyway, we feel it, so might as well make it work for us. It's fascinating how you got to conquer these fears, and you got yourself this really great title, which does bring attention, because you are having your head up from the crowd. You stand up. Can you please share with us, because I'm pretty sure that our audience wants to know, how does your business help other people? How do you help entrepreneurs through the leadership skills that you have acquired all these years?
Sure. Well, I do a number of things. So I do one-to-one coaching, and I do group coaching, and I have online leadership courses. So the first course I created actually is called Leadership for Teens. And that one was, as the father of two teens, it kind of really was a passion of mine to, how do I didn't come across the 7 Habits till I was probably in my early 30s. And I thought, like, if only I'd known this when I was 18, like, how different would my life have been? So with that course, I'm trying to bring some leadership concepts to teenagers. I talk about things like paradigms and the emotional bank account, self-awareness. And I build it around helping them build their resume, because of course every teenager is probably looking for a part-time job to pay for the movies and food and whatever, clothes, whatever else teenagers do. So that was kind of my first course that I went into, trying to get those leadership concepts into the hands of teens. And then another course I have is leadership for retail managers. So this is taking my 20 years of experience working in retail and trying to facilitate leadership. So I actually just finished with a group of 5 stores. So the customer of mine, the client, she owns 5 Hallmark stores. And I took her leadership team through a 7-week program. And we talked about a vision for their business, how they share that vision with their employees, a lot about customer service, a lot about employee service, which is something that most people don't really think about, but I think of customer service and employee service as 2 sides of the same coin. And then we talk about coaching. I mean, if you're, it's funny because now that I'm a coach, it just comes naturally saying the word coach. But when I look back on my career, I was coaching for 20 years. I just didn't call it coaching or know it was coaching. But and anyone who's a people leader, you're coaching your team all the time, whether you call it coaching or not. So, we talk about in that course, creating a coaching culture. How do you provide feedback? How do people receive feedback? It's funny because in the context of, most people think of coaching in the context of sports. And in sports, most coaching is done by yelling in sports, but it's very immediate. You've made a mistake. Here's what you need to do next time, and move on. And people just accept that in the context of a sport because they're trying to win, and it's that kind of competitive nature. Whereas then you get into a business context, and when you try to coach people, I mean, hopefully you're not yelling at them, but people get their backs up and it's like, oh, this guy's always criticizing what I'm doing or whatever. But if you can create this culture of feedback where people are accepting of the feedback, they recognize it for what it is, which is trying to make you a better employee, a better person, to give your customer a better experience, and so on, then there isn't any negative connotation around it anymore. Like, it's not about telling you what you're doing wrong. It's about helping you get better and improve. So we do a lot of that. So that's kind of how I'm trying to take my leadership practice to help retail leaders with their teams. The one of the hardest parts in businesses like that is the turnover of staff is quite high. And especially in a store like that where you have seasonal, the spike in November, December for Christmas is huge. So you're hiring maybe double the staff that you normally have. So that's why it's important to have a really strong culture that's welcoming. You get the proper training in, and then you support those people through this very short stint, because come January, they're gone. The business isn't there, and they know that when they come in. So it's not a surprise to them, but you can make the best of it. And then, when you create a culture like that too, you have people come back the next year to work again. People tell their friends, and the irony too is, like, employees and their families and their social circles, they're also customers. So, if you can create a good experience for your employees, there's benefits to your business in general, just from word of mouth of what a great place it is to work. So it must be a great place to shop, et cetera. So those are kind of the things that I'm focused on. And then I've got other programs for different levels, people that are aspiring to be a manager, people that are new managers. Often I like working with that group, because I know when I became a manager, they just say, congratulations, you're a manager. And then they don't tell you anything. And you don't know what you're doing. And for most people, when they become a manager, it's because they were an amazing individual contributor, and the reward is to become a manager. Well, all of a sudden you're accountable for other people. It's not just about you anymore. And that's a big adjustment for somebody who's a strong individual contributor, because now you all your success has been attributed to your own work. And now you're shifting to your success is now based on the work of other people that work for you. So I help people with that transition and understanding how to take all the best things that they were able to do as an individual contributor and help their team build those same skills in them. So yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
Let me tell you, Greg is not wasting any time because he also has 2 podcasts. Can you please tell us about this great way of spreading your message even further?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one I have is called Coach to Coach. And basically I just came up with the idea of, I've been on this coaching course with a bunch of people. And, one of the things when you're getting your coaching practice going is visibility. You need to get your name out there and so on. I thought, so why don't I tap into this group of people that I've now met? And the beauty of doing courses online is they're all over the world. A lot of them are in the UK, some are in the US, I'm in Canada. So anyway, I just put it out there. Who wants to come on, similar to how you and I ended up here today? Who has a story to tell and wants to come and share with an audience what they're doing? So I basically talk to those folks about what they're doing in their coaching practice, who they're coaching, how they help people, and so on. It's been a big learning for me to see just how diverse coaching can be. There isn't kind of a one size to coaching. It's everyone can benefit from coaching, regardless of your lot in life or what your job is or your family situation or what have you. And the number of coaches that I've interviewed, they're all very different in terms of who they're working with and what their motivation is for working with those folks. So that's the first one. And then the other one is something called It's Simple, Really. And this is a gentleman, Vadim. He's a former colleague of mine when we worked in retail analytics together. And around the same time I started my business, he started his own business as well. And we used to do a program called Entrepreneur versus Entrepreneur, which is just us recording our conversations every day and posting them on YouTube. So there's like over 100 episodes of that on YouTube. Anyway, he ended up getting another job on a contract, so he doesn't have time to do that anymore. So we switched to doing this weekly It's Simple, Really, where we just talk about a topic and we try to decompose it and simplify it. So we've talked about things like, there's a quote, no pressure, no diamonds, which is the quote basically says you need to have pressure to perform really well, which I kind of disagree with. So that episode was about kind of debunking that. Anyway, there's just, we joke, it's just 2 regular guys talking about a subject and voicing our opinions. And then we invite people to comment. And if they agree or disagree, it's, whatever it is, we're open to hearing feedback. We're just 2 guys having a conversation. So that's that podcast.
That is wonderful. And these kinds of podcasts and media do get one thinking further. It's not necessarily about stepping out of your comfort zone to see things from a new angle, to listen to other people, debate something that is maybe a bit of a paradigm, because I too believe that you don't need to be constantly under pressure to perform at your highest. I think that you need to be as you decide to be, as long as you have a free mindset completely. I think that's all someone needs to do their best and to tap into their potential more and more. You mentioned motivation, Greg. Can you please tell us what inspires you truly? Is it interior? Is it exterior? What is it?
Yeah. I think the thing that motivates me the most is I just follow my feeling, basically my passion. I've kind of coined this phrase, which is kind of a pickup of a kid's show that I used to watch with my kids. But it was this girl on the show. She was a diva, and she said, "I just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it." And so I've coined this phrase, diva entrepreneurship. I just do what I want to do when I want to do it and how I want to do it. And so I wake up in the morning and I have an idea for something. And if I like it and I think it makes me feel good, like I just have this good feeling, but this is a great idea, I just pursue it. And I might spend a few hours building a deck or a video or doing something. And oftentimes I get to partway through and I go, yeah, this is not really going where I thought it was going to go. And I just throw it out and go on to the next thing. So that's what's motivating me, is just following the things that come up, the things that show up for me. And I'm not tied to an outcome, or kind of what I said earlier about the journey and not the destination. It's like I'm really just enjoying the doing of things and seeing where it takes me. Yeah, it's just a very, I think I spent so many years working in a corporation where people tell you what to do. Now that I'm an entrepreneur, I get to decide what I'm going to do. And it's, I don't know, my only regret is I didn't do it sooner.
Greg, this is epic. Let me tell you, I'm enjoying our talk, and you can see me smiling a lot. Our friends on YouTube can see this also. This is some great, empowering, really inspiring thing that you are telling us here, because most of us are divas and we don't know it yet, because I'm a diva entrepreneur as well as you are. I was indeed pretty sick and tired of other people telling me what to do, and I was employed as well. And now that we have our own passion and fire and desire to pursue, life is looking so much better. And I love what you said at the beginning of our talk, and I need to ask you because it's going to stay on my mind otherwise. Can you please tell me, how does a bright future look to you? Because you said that you are seeing your future brighter than ever. And what would you advise that a young person would focus on in order to keep their eyes focused on a bright future and not on the potential problems that may arise with every step sometimes?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think, approaching life from a glass half full perspective is kind of the right, or the way I like to think of it, right? There's always going to be things going on that are negative or don't go your way. If you want reasons to not do something, there's going to be a million reasons to choose from. And that's the glass half empty kind of perspective. So, there's plenty of company in that realm. There's lots of people that sit around and mope and empathize with each other about their lot in life or how terrible things are. And you can get a lot of consolation and feel like you belong with this whole group of people because you're all in that same boat, but it really doesn't get you anywhere in the end. So that's why my big advice would be, remember the glass is half full, and you have unlimited potential. If I think about what I'm learning with the 3 principles in Sydney Banks' work is, you already have what you need. You're whole, you're not broken, you're happy. I like to think of, our default state as human beings is happiness. And if you're not happy, it's because you've just forgot that you're actually happy. Like when you clear your mind and you let things go, underneath all that, your default state is happiness. I mean, if you think about, you mentioned your daughter earlier, I think, like, if you think of little children, they're happy. They're generally, when they're not happy, is because they're hungry or their diaper's wet or something. But other than that, they are happy. They, I'll give you another quote on that line from Jamie the other day. I was watching a video of his. He said, happiness is so easy, even babies can do it. And it's because they haven't spent years being taught a whole bunch of things that aren't true about themselves. So, just realize how happy you actually are. Your innate capacities, I talked about this before: wisdom, resilience, curiosity, well-being. You have power for insight and realization. That's really what's going to help you grow, is when you have insights and realizations. And the key there is you already have all these things. Like, you don't need to do anything to get them. You're born with these innate capacities. And then the last thing is just, you create your own experience. So once you understand where your experience is coming from, it's very liberating and powerful. And who you really are is amazing, and you have unlimited potential.
Beautifully said. And now that I'm hearing you say this, my mind is racing to making sure that I keep all the unwanted thoughts and unneeded thinking patterns that are not ours. If we get to analyze them, you'll see that, okay, these thoughts are in my mind, but it doesn't mean that they're mine. I just took it from my colleagues, from my employees, from my spouse, from the people around me. And a great lesson is learning from your mistakes. I love it when you say that the cup is half full, because this means that you get to tap into those failures, as we call them, but these are necessary steps along the way. Us thinking that we should know it all from the very beginning is virtually and physically and chemically, and any way you take it, it's impossible, because it's something new. The great thing to tap into here is to know that, okay, you did something that wasn't right for you this time. As you say that you maybe are pursuing something with a video or a different thing with your entrepreneurship work, but then next time you'll know better, you'll know how to do things in a different way. And this is priceless. This is wisdom, it's experience. And I love it that you said that you mentioned this. Very inspiring. And can you also tell us, Greg, about this wonderful promotion that you have decided to create for the people watching us and listening to us? I truly appreciate your generosity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I didn't mention this program earlier, but so I have another program called Coaching and Mentoring for Leaders, which is a 4-week program. And the next one it starts in the middle of January, and then there'll be subsequent programs after that all throughout the year. So I'm offering a discount on that program. So I believe you have the promo code No Fear is in the chat. And I'm also offering a free coaching session to anyone who wants it. So you can reach me at greg@teamuyp.com and just be happy to have a conversation with you about anything that you want to talk about. The more I get into coaching, the more universal I realize it is. My wife comes home from work. She runs the aquatics at a university here, and she'll come home and be talking about a customer or a staff person or somebody. And I'm like, that person needs coaching. That person needs coaching. It's like, I can see so clearly how, and it's not that coaching, to me, coaching is about pointing people in a direction, right? It's not about giving them answers. The only thing that's going to help them is an answer they find for themselves, but it's about pointing them in that direction. And, it's something I look back on my career, and I've been lucky that I've had some bosses that have been, although I don't think they would have called themselves coaches, but were great at coaching me along in my career. Things like that. I've worked for great companies that paid to send me on leadership courses and things, and that's kind of how you get introduced to things like Stephen Covey and other leadership gurus out there. But yeah, so that's why I'm extending this offer. I just, the more people that I can interact with and offer coaching to, the happier I'll be. So yeah, that's an offer I'm more than happy to extend to our audience here today.
I appreciate your generosity, Greg. Thank you so much. And can you please tell us, how can our audience get in touch with you today? Because I'm pretty sure they're so curious to learn more about you and these amazing programs that you are running.
Sure. So my coaching site is coachingplease.com. I always say it only takes 2 words, coaching please. And then my main site is teamuyp.com. And on there you can find, all my courses and everything that I'm offering on there. And then you can always email me at greg@teamuyp.com, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Greg, it has been a pleasure and an honor. I am very inspired, I'm very motivated and empowered by your great thoughts, and I'll be watching you closely to see what amazing things you will be creating from now on as well. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and for sharing with us your beautiful stories. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Roxana.
It is my pleasure.